Hi there, I'm Dan Newman. Welcome to Layered Wisdom, a channel where I talk about 3D printing for those of us who are old enough to know better, but still like to learn new things. Today I'm going to move aside from my usual format of reviewing printers or filaments or doing prints and talk to you a little bit about a new phenomenon that is occurring in 3D printing, and I want to catch us all up. So stay tuned. Here we go. Now, the way this came about is that recently our daughter sent us a photo of one of our granddaughters coloring in a coloring book that grandma had sent her. And this got me to thinking about coloring in 3D printing, especially the evolution that has occurred over time in the way that we do multicolor prints. To start with, for the longest time, if you wanted to 3D print something, you picked a color and that's what you printed it in. Imagine that you had a box of crayons, however, they're all the same color. The object is going to be all that one color. Now, of course, that limitation did not last very long. People figured out very quickly that you can change the color of something that you're printing by simply stopping the print at a certain point and then manually changing the filament. For example, here's a clock that I printed. Spaceballs, the wall clock. Thank you. This was set up so that you can stop the printer at a certain layer and then switch from black to white and finish the print. Now, mind you, I'm not talking at all about color changing filaments. There are filaments that I have that change color as you go along on the roll. That's a different story. I have several of those. They give you some pretty neat patterns. For example, here are some K-pop figures that I printed for my granddaughters. And I printed these in a cotton candy filament that, as you go along, kind of gives you the look like it's a cotton candy cloud. No, that's a different kind of cloud. Also, I have this candy cane filament that I've used to print Christmas decorations. But I think one of my favorites is this color changing silk filament. It actually has 3 colors in it as you print it out, as you can see here on this cool little dragon that I printed. What we really need is some device that can hold the filaments and then let you change the filaments on the fly. Prusa, which is one of the founding manufacturers of 3D printing, they had an early version of this. But really, where this came out to start with is in 2022 when Bamboo introduced their flagship printer, the X1 Carbon, and alongside it, they introduced something called the AMS, an automatic material system. This was a unit that you could sit on top of your printer and it would hold up to 4 different filaments, and you could control it in the slicer so that the AMS would change the filament for you at a specific point in your print. Now, the year after, they followed this up with the AMS Lite, which is just the 4 open spools. As you see here, I have one of these for my Bamboo A1 printer, which gives you this same functionality at a lower price. This was essentially the first paradigm shift in the industry. Now we could have multicolored prints with different filaments. We could actually even have different filaments themselves with some limitations. And Bamboo set up the AMS units so that they can be daisy chained. And so you can get up to 16 colors all at the same time for your prints. Yay, 16 colors. Also, there's a nice feature on these such that if you put the same spool of filament in, as I'm printing along, if the first spool empties out, the second spool will just pick right up on the print and continue going without you having to do anything. Very nice for people that printed overnight or had printer farms where they're doing a lot of printing. Now, other manufacturers followed suit pretty quick. You can get an AMS unit for printers like Creality. You can get one for Anycubic. Even Elegoo jumped on the bandwagon. They introduced an upgrade to their Centauri Carbon that they called the Centauri Carbon 2, and it has the system on it called the Canvas system. I'm not sure what Canvas stands for. I'll have to look that up. Oh, I also want to mention that Elegoo has finally shipped or started to ship their conversion kit for the original Centauri Carbon to give them a canvas system that will do multicolors as well. About time, Elegoo. If and when I get one, we'll have a video on that for you. So, of course, after giving us this first AMS unit, Bambu upped the ante by coming out with an AMS Pro 2, actually it's AMS 2 Pro, that also adds filament drying to the mix. And they came out with one called the AMS HT, which is designed to work with the high temperature filaments, such as nylon. Now, however, all of these multicolored printers have the same problem, and that problem is printer poop. Printer poop, sorry. Every time you change the filament, the printer has to cut the existing filament, retract the filament back, push in the new filament, and send it through the extruder and out the nozzle until it has purged all of the old filament and the new filament is now present. The bigger the color change, the more filament has to be purged to make sure that the old color does not bleed into the new color. Here, for example, is a diagram where I've got set up cyan, magenta, and yellow filament, and you can see on this chart that it takes this amount of filament to purge out in order to be able to change the colors. Think of it this way. Imagine that you're coloring a picture with crayons. However, every time that you want to use a different crayon, you had to take the old crayon and sharpen it, and then go and put it back in the box and put the box away, and then get out a new box with your new color.
Wait! I found the right color!
And then sharpen that. And you have to sharpen it a lot to make sure that there isn't any of the old crayon left in the sharpener. So not only do you get a lot of crayon shavings, but it takes a long time. There's also another problem that's present with AMS systems. Because all of the filaments have to go through the same extruder and the same nozzle, you can have issues because different filaments like PETG and PLA a lot of times will run at different temperatures. Here I've got a screenshot that shows for PLA and then for PETG, and you can see that the recommended temperature of the nozzle is different. Not only do you have to worry about purging filament, but you end up compromising on how hot the nozzle is. So to solve this, manufacturers introduced what I call the second paradigm shift in 3D printing, and that is the concept of dual nozzle. Here, you've got a single tool head that moves back and forth on the railing, but it has two nozzles. This means that you can effectively print with two differing filaments, and then that means you can print with combos like PETG and TPU or PETG and PLA. This is especially helpful if you're printing something that needs supports, because you can make the support interface in a filament that doesn't match. For example, you can print PLA, PETG does not stick to it, and that gives you that ability to clean your supports off very nicely. Now, Bambu introduced their dual nozzle extruder on their high-end series, on the H2D and the H2C. The H2C is a little different. We'll talk about that in a minute. And now their newest printer, which is a replacement for their flagship X1 Carbon, which is called the X2D. Now, all these printers solve the problem of dual filament, but they still have the same problem with printer poop. If you're trying to print with more than two colors, you're still going to have to do the retraction and purging. So now we come to the fourth paradigm shift in printing, and that's a true multi-head system. This, again, pioneered by Prusa in the original XL, which could have up to 5 heads on it. But what we're really looking for is something like is here on my Snapmaker, where there are 4 separate heads. Each one of them has its own extruder, its own nozzle, and its own filament tube. This is essentially like having 4 crayons sharpened and ready to go. You want a different color, you just pick up that crayon and go. And the changes are very quick. Now, let me talk for just a moment about the Bamboo H2C. This is still that single head dual nozzle printer. However, it has the advantage of the fact that one of those 2 nozzles can actually be quickly changed with extra nozzles that are kept right on a rack in the system. This gives you the ability then to route up to 7 different filament colors in a single print. Because each of these filaments is hot loaded, there's very little poop that comes out as well. All right, so all of this is there, and we asked the question, is there another step that we can take? Now, remember when I said that the Bamboo AMS unit can be daisy chained so that you can get 16 different colors? Well, the 2 nozzles give you 2 colors by default. Snapmaker gives me 4 colors. Prusa XL, if I want to build a Porsche, can give me 5. And the H2C can actually give me 7. Oh, wait a minute. If I daisy chain all of these together, I can get up to 24 colors. Woohoo! Oh, it costs that much money? Never mind. But what about 16 million colors? Big, huge, giant box of crayons. Well, this is where our last paradigm shift comes into play. And that's the introduction of full color spectrum printing. Now, if you remember back in grade school, if you ever did paints, little tempera paint things, and you could discover that you could mix them together to get new colors, you could get red and blue together to make purple. You could mix yellow and blue to make green. You could mix them all together to make a big black-brown mess. Well, some very intrepid 3D print enthusiasts saw that you could do this on printing. If you have very thin layer lines, you get the effect where the colors blend together. And this gives you the impression of mixed colors. You can do a similar thing then with filaments with cyan, magenta, yellow, and in this case, white filament to mix them together. This first was discovered by a user called Aceman1110 on Reddit. And a user called Ratdo took and updated the open source Orca slicer that Snapmaker was using so that it could support full color printing. So essentially what happens is when you load up this new version of Snapmaker Orca, you get not only the 4 filaments that you have loaded, but you get a virtual or mixed list of up to 10 different colors. You can add your own if you've got a specific gradient blend or a specific pattern blend that you want. You can do that. They even have included a color picker where you can go in and try and get an exact color based on what you have in the 4 filaments. For example, here I did one trying to get this familiar orange color, and it gets pretty close. Okay, let's finish this off. We've got the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yep, thank you. Here, I printed a set of tulip bulbs, and I did this with the 10 different colors available to me in this new version of Snapmaker. And I was just amazed at what I could get out of those 3 colors in white. Well, that's the good part. What was the bad part? The bad part is that this technique of blending colors doesn't work if you're trying to do something that's just strictly horizontal. As soon as you start to just print horizontal, you'll notice that it defaults to the last or first color that was printed, as you can see, for example, on the bottom of these tulips here. So really what this does is it opens up color printing. Now, remember, this was a third-party people that did this on their own. Snapmaker themselves has not included this in their shipping version of the software, but Bamboo jumped on the bandwagon, and their latest slicer, the Bamboo Studio, has the ability to do virtual filaments in it. Here you can see, same thing. I get the 10 filaments, which are a mix of the 4, and I can add my own colors. It does not, however, have a color picker. One final note about this, and here's the ugly part. Even though you can print full spectrum on these printers, if you've got a single nozzle printer, like my A1, you're going to be there a while, and you're going to have some issues. Here, for example, are the stats for the Snapmaker. I printed these out at the recommended layer height of 0.08, and the total print time was 7 hours and 40 minutes, and it changed filaments 870 times. And again, it's just picking up a head and putting it back because the filament's already loaded. Did that 870 times. Total amount of filament used, not only for the little tulips, but the little tower that it has to build to change the colors, 38 grams. That's all it was. These are small little tulip bulbs, as you can see here. Now, I did the same thing. I sliced it up on the A1. I didn't actually print it, but I was curious to see what it said. Same 870 changes, but the total amount of time, 1 day and 11 hours. And take a look at the total filament used. 542 grams, of which 466 of that is printer poop. Now, that's a lot of poop. That's like half a spool, practically. So needless to say, I'm not going to try and print full spectrum color on my A1. I will stick to it here on my wonderful new Snapmaker. So I hope you've enjoyed this walk through the land of color and 3D printing with me. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up so that I can do more content that gives you more layered insight into the world of 3D printing. See you soon.